India's interests tilt eastwards, and are hugely tied to the Indian Ocean. The 21st century's theatre of huge rivalries. Will India remain unaffected by the changing dynamics between the US and China? What is policy of dehyphenating? Can it work for India? Why Indian Ocean is turning out to be a game of contention between India and China? What is the strategic thinking of US about the Indian Ocean region? GS Paper 2, Effect of Policies and Politics of Developed and Developing Countries on India's Interests. What is the context about? Nations have no permanent friends or allies in diplomacy, they have only permanent interests, said the famous English statesman Lord Palmerston. One country that takes this seriously is America. America has no permanent friends or foes, it has only permanent interests. President-elect Donald Trump said that China is no friend of America's but a job stealer and an enemy. This shows US-China relations under Trump will be a great deal of fire and brimstone. India's economic and strategic interests are hugely tied to the Indian Ocean, the 21st century's theatre of huge rivalries. If Trump translates his rhetoric into reality, a harried China will be a nightmare there. Will India remain unaffected by this changing dynamic between the US and China? In the last couple of years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's foreign policy has included a conscious strategy of dehyphenation. Prime Minister Modi has developed close personal and working relations with both President Obama and President Xi Jinping. At the same time, he has further strengthened India's bilateral relationship with Japan on the one hand and Russia on the other. However, in a changing scenario, India will not find it too easy to maintain this dehyphenation policy. There will be expectations and consequent pressures from each side on India. What is policy of dehyphenating? Dehyphenating refers to a policy started by the US government under President Bush, but sealed by the Obama administration, of dealing with India and Pakistan in different silos, without referring to their bilateral relations. It enabled the US to build closer military and strategic ties with India without factoring in the reaction from Pakistan, and to continue its own strategy in Afghanistan with the help of the Pakistan military without referring back to India. Why Indian Ocean is turning out to be game of contention between India and China. The relative decline of US power in the Indian Ocean region has left a void that is increasingly being filled by China and India, both eager to secure their position as major power brokers in global affairs. The sea lanes in the Indian Ocean are considered among the most strategically important in the world. More than 80% of the world's seaborne trade in oil transits through Indian Ocean choke points. More than half the world's armed conflicts are presently located in the Indian Ocean region, while the waters are also home to continually evolving strategic developments, such as the competing rises of China and India, potential nuclear confrontation between India and Pakistan, the US interventions in Iraq and Afghanistan, Islamist terrorism, growing incidents of piracy in and around the Horn of Africa, and management of diminishing fishery resources. As a result of all this, almost all the world's major powers have deployed substantial military forces in the Indian Ocean region. What is the strategic thinking of US about the Indian Ocean region? US strategic thinking about the Indian Ocean is in a state of flux. While it is not at all clear where it will go, we can nevertheless understand some of the basics of US strategy in the region. There are concerns about the rise of China's military power in East Asia. The US perceive China as a significant strategic concern across the entire Indo-Pacific. It identifies India as the key U.S. security partner in the region. It is believed that India's strategic interests in the Indian Ocean are broadly aligned with U.S. interests and that the U.S. can therefore safely rely on India to assume a considerable share of the security burden.